We're so excited to have all of you join us today. I'm Lori Jones with Avocet Communications, for those of you who don't know me. And we are going to walk through today why startups and early stage brands fail and why cool just isn't enough. And let's go ahead and start by sharing some insight here. Let's see here. Maybe. There we go. Years ago, my father and I met with an incredible entrepreneur, came into the office and was sharing a great product that he had developed. And seemingly everything about this product was truly going to change the world. He chatted about the features, the insights, the outcomes. He really knew what was important about this product. And he had done enough homework to know that it would impact people. He used the word cool a lot. It's the best thing since sliced bread. It is as cool as you can get. But he said, I'm out of money and I don't have any funding. And I'm wondering if you could provide your marketing services at no charge for a piece of the action. We said yes to that a few times and then quickly realized that cool just wasn't going to sell without the right research in place to make it marketable. So sorry, guys, I am toggling between two screens and I can't get this to this screen. Here we go. So why isn't cool enough? We're going to go ahead and answer this question today for all of you and provide insights that really drive home what it takes to get a product, to get a solution, a service into the marketplace so that you really can grow the brand. What we know is innovation has a lot to do with cool, right? So cool is all about innovation. It's the next best thing since sliced bread. But innovation is nothing unless it is providing improvement to the individual, the buyer, or the buyer, or a buyer from that point. So it does not matter if you're B2B, if you're a consumer product or retail, innovation can only be adopted with improvement. So if you take a look at Google and you Google innovation, many things come up, right? But innovation doesn't mean anything unless it's adopted. So the creation might be there, the coolness factor is there, but if it's not adopted, what happens next? You have an individual coming to a marketing firm and saying, sorry, I'm all out of money. We spent it all on R&D and research, building the infrastructure. What can we do next? So adoption does not happen without marketing. And what we're going to review today are 3 key areas and takeaways for you to think about when you're building your solution, your product, your company. The first one is reasons why startups and growth-minded businesses fail. We're going to talk about 3 ways to get your product or solution the more attention that it deserves, and a must-do if you want your startup to maintain ground and not fizzle. Okay. So let's talk about why startups and growth-minded businesses fail. There's some really unique information here that we're going to share with you today. The first thing is this. During 2020, the Internal Revenue Service, which is of course where most new businesses start, right? Because they want to get your information first. They had 4.4 million applications for new businesses during that time. The second and third quarters, business formation topped every quarter since 2005. Those are big numbers. So although COVID shuttered about 30% of businesses during that time, it simultaneously was responsible for the 21st century's greatest surge in entrepreneurship. So congratulations to everyone for being a part of that big drive. However, nearly 1/5 of new businesses shut down in their first year. And guess what? It does not matter if you're venture backed or not. If you're a series A, B startup with seed money, they still fail. Why are these businesses shutting their doors? We need to answer that first so that we can provide you the insights that will create probability in success downstream. This is a great study that we found by Wilbur Labs. It's recent as far as research is concerned. It was conducted in 2020. And take a look at the information here. These are why early stage businesses fail. They lost money. They didn't get the financing they needed. No business plan. Focus was pushed aside. They didn't have the right team. They were outcompeted. You can see all of these components here on the bottom. What we've gone through and done is highlighted in the lighter blue there, all components that tie into marketing. No business plan, outcompeted, no market need, pricing issues, poor marketing, poor UX, ignored customers, failed geographic expansion, and product was mistimed. Of everything on this list, look at the importance ultimately of marketing. What we know and what we told the individual that we met with many, many years ago and the 1,200 entrepreneurs since that time is your product will not sell itself. It must have marketing backing it up from a research standpoint and an execution standpoint in order for you to hit the market with a vengeance. So next, we're going to share 3 ways to get your market or solution the more attention it absolutely deserves. But let's start out by discussing the biggest marketing issue brands have. So everything that we discussed and you saw on that previous slide ultimately has to do with differentiation. The sea of sameness is something that we see day in and day out with most brands. They look the same, they talk the same, they speak about the same features as their direct and indirect competition. So it makes adoption incredibly difficult. What are some ways that you can ultimately increase and position your brand in that sea of sameness so that people begin to take notice? The first thing is recognizing the importance of positioning. We position for share of market, we brand for share of heart, but people are afraid of positioning. You definitely have to roll up your sleeves. There's a lot of research involved, but one of the first key elements is believing that positioning doesn't matter. When we position for share of market, that is setting the brand up to succeed. You have the insights from a research standpoint that allows you to differentiate yourself. Believing that the audience gets it is another area that we see a lot of brands getting wrong. Imagine that you are a new app product, and the app product ultimately helps you sleep more easily at night. And the messaging simply is sleep better. Do you fully understand what that app product is? You don't, because the messaging isn't where it needs to be. It doesn't differentiate. And we're going to talk in a little bit about some areas and how you can make that messaging resonate with your audience in a much bigger way. Another one, making lofty promises that the product cannot deliver, back to the app example I just provided, and moving out of a successful swim lane when you should just own the swim lane that you might be in. So here are some elements that we always take a look at in some of the programs that we develop with our Go Beyond Strategic Communications scaling plans. So we take a look at the competitive alternatives. If you didn't exist, what would your customers use? That's always a great spot to start. POP and POD, a point of parity versus a point of difference, is an area that we see a lot of brands hanging their hat on, the point of parity. They talk about those table stakes that every brand in the market already is talking about, and they utilize that rather as their go-to-market messaging strategy. Unique attributes. What features or capabilities do you have that the alternatives do not have? That's always a great way to establish that unique swim lane for yourself. And then what is the value that we're providing customers? What value do the attributes enable for the customer? We forget that. And if we can really understand what the value is for the customer, then we're ultimately delivering differentiation that creates those emotional epiphanies and those aha moments that are so important. Lastly, these two become very, very important. Customers that care. So casting too wide a net can be a real detriment. If you're taking a premium position in a marketplace and you're casting a wide net, then you've got an audience that you're marketing to that just are not going to care because they might be more interested in price as a value. And then what context makes the value obvious to your segments? And we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but this is positioning that truly does differentiate. The next component that we feel is paramount here is understanding the need state. So let's pretend it's noon. It might be noon for some of us. What's happening to our tummies? Our tummies are saying, you know what? It's time to eat. We need to go to lunch. That's a need state at that moment in time. So when we take that need state and apply it to our solution and our products, we're really developing positioning that resonates with that very unique audience. I put six examples on the screen here today. And by the way, there are hundreds of need states that exist out in the marketing world based on who you are, what your product or solution is, and who your audience is. But you can take a look at functionality, reliability, price, performance, convenience, and efficiency as a couple examples here. We talked about price a second ago with becoming a premium brand. Customers have unique budgets with which they can purchase your product or service. So if you're a premium brand, price might be something that you want to consider. Or if you're a low price leader like the dollar store, price is obviously something very important to them. Typically with these need states, we suggest that you not adopt more than 2 within your marketing strategy. So speaking about yourself and study your audience, we love what we do day in and day out, right? It's we live and breathe it. And the tendency is to talk about us instead of ultimately the benefit to the client. The best product positioning copy takes the exact phraseology that you might be able to obtain through some of the positioning strategies that we just talked about with user interviews and applies them to that message. It's first person at that time, at that point in time. It's customer first. When we talk about product features, what it does and how it works, we lose an audience, especially if it's a complicated product. If we talk more about the benefit and lead with that, that's when we move into customer first, people first marketing, and we can really maximize campaign performance. It's always about the customer first and the company second. So this is a must do if you don't want your startup to fizzle. It boils down to communication. We're taking everything in that we've just spoken about from a positioning standpoint, setting the brand up to succeed, from a customer first standpoint with the messaging and how we ultimately talk about that product, but the communication of it is equally as important. So we've talked about context, right? Context is, where does the customer sit? What are the societal issues that that customer might deal with day in and day out? What are trends that are happening in the marketplace that could help us scooch our product in to make a real impact, because maybe another client is sunsetting, or maybe another client is only providing one product line and not the 2 that they used to. Those provide lots of opportunity for us. The media conversation today is something that is very, very interesting, along with the industry. That is context. That is what the buyer deals with every single day. Then we take our company to the right, the mission, the vision, our point of view, our track record, the product, the technology, the people, the customer service, the business model. All of these things become very, very important. When we combine these two, we come up with a market position and a concept based on the strengths of the company and the benefits to the audience that truly develop the context in which we can become interested about the product that you might be selling or the solution that you provide. So with all of that, we know that cool isn't enough, because at the end of the day, innovation does not sell without improvement and adoption. Sales and marketing alignment is absolutely key here. We know that there are incredible organizations that focus on sales incredible organizations that focus on marketing, but the best organizations focus on sales and marketing together. That sales and marketing alignment is what will bring a product to market with great success. And none of this will happen without differentiation. That sea of sameness is something that we battle each and every day, unless it's that great, pretty pair of shoes that just, attacks you immediately in a display ad. But without the positioning, people first, and context in which the buyer sits, all is lost. And now we will go ahead and open it up for questions.
That's awesome. I actually have a couple of questions. I don't want to necessarily hog the time, but I guess one of the things that comes to me is, how do we get out of our own heads and figure out the difference between table stakes and differentiation?
Well, certainly the process we've shared is an important way to think about it, number one. But number two, the tendency is to want to talk about ourselves. So examples of table stakes are great customer service. We're open from 9 to 5. We are, a 5-star rating. Those are the sort of things that are meaningful, but they don't differentiate because we're not competing only with our direct competition, but everyone else in the marketplace that is saying the same thing each and every day. So we say we've got a 5-star rating. Well, guess what? 50 brands that day are saying I've got a 5-star rating. So when you ultimately push that aside and really think about differentiation, then you can really surface those other areas that will make a difference in the mindset of your audience and create what we refer to as emotional epiphanies.
Okay. So if it's something that I see a lot, then obviously that's not where I need to be focused as far as differentiation. Might be easy, but easy isn't the solution on this.
That's right. Thank you, Eric.
Okay.
Would you be able to put that slide back up where you had those, the one he was asking about with the point of differentiation? And because there was a question that came to mind on that one.
Of course.
Thank you.
You bet. I believe it's this one.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a cool slide.
Yeah. That question, if you didn't exist, what would customers use, was a huge eye opener for me.
Yeah.
When you think back, right? Who are your competitors?
That's right. Let me give you a really unique example with that. So we have taken an incredible client through our Go Beyond Strategic Communications Scaling Plan and walked them through this strategic process. And when we are developing value, quite often we will ask ourselves, are we going to challenge someone or something? And in this situation, it is a product in the money laundering area and for the legal business. And imagine having to track, as a lawyer, having to track your customers, visa expirations, insurance expirations, just all these components that expire over time. And if they do expire and the government finds out, they're arrested because they're not in compliance. So the biggest competitor in this situation is Excel. So when you think through the alternatives, don't look at the obvious, such as a direct competitor. Think about, do we need to challenge something? So the something in this situation is the old way of doing it. Good old Excel. And so we focus on, in this situation, the information telling you when something is expiring versus having to go in and figure it out on your own when it expires.
Yeah, that's a great example. Do you have something similar to speak to the last one, the what context makes the value obvious?
Yes, thank you. So again, another great client in the aerospace arena who we've taken through this strategic process as well. And they are a company, by the way, who just had a 250 million IPO last summer. And they are an innovative, novel approach to solving technology needed by NASA that is less expensive and quicker to market. So the context that they're working with day in and day out is the old way of doing things. It's going to be expensive. It's going to take 5 years to complete, but NASA's really in tune with faster, better, cheaper. So we came up with an incredible strategy there that talks about old space and new tricks. So we're paying homage to everything that old space has gained for the industry to be where it is today. But the new tricks was a different way of messaging innovation in an industry where the word innovation is completely overused. So we created a market position there that really paved the way through their Series B funding and ultimately led to acquisition and then a compilation go-to-market IPO.
That's great. I wouldn't put that one together myself. So thank you very much. Wow.
And again, it did not happen without using this positioning process and strategy that is so important. I was speaking yesterday at a founded event for a city in northern Colorado, founded in Fort Collins. And I had the question, we've already been in business 5 years. This really doesn't pertain to me anymore. And I answered very politely and said, guess what? It does, because you always have new competitors making inroads. Your point of difference and point of parity is always changing because of those competitive inroads. The unique attributes are growing because the audience is using your product or solution differently. And so I illustrated for her the need to always be taking a look at this. There are some of our clients that look at this monthly with their team meetings. They'll have sales meetings with marketing at the table, and they're going through this list to talk about what is happening in the marketplace and how they need to pivot and adapt. Another thing that is very important with some of the research that we shared with you, one of the reasons many of these startup companies fail is because they don't adapt and pivot quickly enough. Any other thoughts or questions or any slides you'd like me to move to?
Man.
Can we go back to the why entrepreneurs fail slide?
Yes.
I thought that was pretty eye-opening.
Same. I can't get over that one.
I hadn't seen that one before, Lori, and I think it's a great way to set up what comes after. But I just wanted to look. At it again.
I believe this slide apply. I mean, we've been in business 42 years, and each one of these line items I take a look at, and we've been through it at some point. Okay, and it does not matter if you're a startup or just 10 years in or 20 or 40 years in. At some point, you are going to be able to, you are going to be interacting with something on this slide. But to me, the really compelling part when we were doing research for this presentation today was the number of elements that are directly tied to marketing.
Yeah, this is cool. I see Ashley has her hand up and has for a little bit too. Otherwise, I was going to ask another question. So,
oh, go ahead. Thank you, Eric. Ashley, go ahead.
Thank you. One of your first slides really resonated with me, which was innovation plus improvement, because I work in healthcare philanthropy for a system that I believe is very innovative. But we have had some physicians who are aligned with our system who really poo-poo innovation, not necessarily because they don't want to learn new tricks, but because they think too much money is thrown at it, and they want to make sure that it's innovating for improvement. And I was just working on writing an end of the year appeal letter and, sponsorship opportunities brochure this week. And I kept thinking about, like, I want improvement with innovation. But then as I'm wordsmithing and I'm looking at text, and I sent it to our CEO of the hospital today, one of the things he said, there's just too much text, too much detail. How do you decide when that you need to qualify a word like innovation and when it's just important to be succinct and tight?
Well, I appreciate that question. And it is something that we as marketers and dare I say innovators really try to tackle day in and day out. And the simple answer here is less is more. If we can create an aha moment, that emotional epiphany with 10 words out of the chute, the likelihood of our audience adopting what we've said and wanting to actually perhaps even learn more is far greater than overwhelming them in the beginning with just too much information.
Thank you.
You bet. Eric, did you have another question?
Yeah, I do. If no one else has a question, I will. I've always got like 100 questions. So
well, if I can jump in where you just left off with Ashley real quick, when I looked at that slide for why businesses, startups go under, it makes me wonder how many times people come to work with you and go through that strategy, but maybe they need, because some of this stuff is like, are their eyes even open to what the problem is? And it feels to me like some of this, the only way I would have learned it is through somebody coaching me that's your problem, So
Right.
How many times is it maybe first not related to marketing that you have to start there? It's just curious.
If I understand your question correctly, and please, move me down a different path if I'm not answering this with what you have in mind. But first of all, I do need to say that I believe in any organization out there, and it does not matter if you are a true startup and one or two people, and you may have very early seed money through family, or if you're moving into a Series A or a Series B, surrounding yourself with the right people is absolutely critical to the long-term success of the business. And again, that can be through a family member who happens to have started his or her own business years ago, and you can just pick their brain. Moreover, there are several associations out there. When you start getting into the Series A, the investment community is automatically going to provide you that consultation. That is very important. But you definitely need, 2 is better than 1, 3 is better than 2. When it comes to thinking outside of the box and realizing that you want to be able to surround yourself with people that think differently and don't have the same gifts that you bring to the table. One of the greatest partnerships I've ever experienced in my life, besides my marriage to my husband, is the partnership I had with my father. And it was because we had 2 very, very different swim lanes in the business that we worked within. And dare I say that the $1 billion IPO that we had 24 months ago, same exact situation with Doug Campbell of Solid Power. He hired the right people around him that thought differently from him, that ultimately led him to the success through all these series of funding and, you know, the position that he sits in the marketplace today.
That's great. Thank you.
You bet.
Okay.
Anyone else? Eric, I see that look in your eyes.
I do. I've got one. Yeah. So I think it's this idea of a lot of what we're kind of going through today. I'm like, man, this would be really straightforward if I was imagining starting a business from scratch.
Mhm.
But that's not our reality, right?
No.
We're an established organization. We believe that we've got our positioning down, things like that. So how do we go about questioning this effectively inside our organization so that some of these questions can actually, you know, be brought up? Because there's a lot of assumptions of, well, we have our point of differentiation, we have our positioning down, we have all of these things, we have it check, when the reality is maybe we don't.
Right. So self-assessments, I appreciate the question, by the way, because we as an agency walk through this with our clients and ourselves as well. And there are lots of ways to take a look at this. And it's always asking yourself, why? So is this the best market position for us? Why is it? And is it the best messaging for us? Why? Is it continuing to resonate with our audience? Do we need to pivot it? And always questioning yourself in a very positive, proactive way will lead to these pivots that may not be working 100%. You know, Ogilvy, one of his famous quotes was, you know, in this wonderful book that I read in 1990, was talking about the fact that many marketers don't know what part of their market, you know, if it's the first 50% or the second 50% of their marketing that's working, but they know ultimately it's affecting the bottom line. So if we can have open conversations with ourselves to close the gap on that 50% that may not be working, imagine what we can do to move into that fast growth position that is so important. There's always a moving target within marketing, always. And think about it this way. So if we launch a campaign in the marketplace, we launched a great campaign for another Go Beyond client last June, and we believe that this campaign is going to resonate for about 12 months. So in a year, we're going to be having these same conversations again, because there's so much outbound advertising and marketing. We know that we're going to have to come up with a new theme. What are we going to learn during that time to understand if the market position is where it needs to be? We're going to be, you know, bringing on new products with this particular client. So that might shift some of the market. Is the market we're going after today really pulling for us, or do we need to pivot? A lot of these discussions take place, and they should take place weekly in combined sales and marketing meetings.
Okay, so there's an element of you got to be consistently questioning this positioning and this differentiation. Maybe kind of a follow-up question, sorry, was how do you test that? Like, I mean, it's one thing to do a gut check, right?
Right.
But a gut check isn't
It
really
isn't
enough.
right. So the best marketing is going to take place when we've got KPIs that we're measuring against. So there are some very, very complicated. I was speaking to a wonderful brand, Arrive Health, who is about at the 800 million Series B mark. I was speaking with their marketing director on Tuesday on my podcast, and he talked about the number of pivots and the complexity of the sales infrastructure that they have. So a lot of us believe in a three-legged stool sales approach, where their three-legged stool has very, very different buyer mindset and buyer needs at each leg of the stool. So they map out each leg of the stool, the audiences within that, and then the specific messages for each one of those audiences. So before long, they've got, with, you know, a very important positioning mantra on top, they've got 12 to 15 different messages based on the buyer mindset. There's always a moving target within one of those, if you really fan it out based on how someone is moving through the sales funnel. And how, again, back to context, how legislation might be changing something that they're dealing with one of those channels. So dare I say, it's always a moving target. And as you look at these solutions that you provide more deeply, there's always something to be working on strategically.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
You bet. Any other questions?
Laura, TC here. Thanks for putting up with me on being on video this morning. The other thing, you know, I always appreciate your expertise. And the other thing I think is important is when you're looking at marketing, you have to look at the whole as well, because it all has to work together. And I know you're an EOS run company, and, you know, we always go back to, you know, whenever you make an evolution or a pivot or a revolution in your company, what are all the pieces you have to look at? And you have to look at the team and the structure as a starting point, because you have to have the right people and you have the right processes to accomplish that. And I recently had a really good natural foods company who did all their marketing as completely app-based marketing, and then they wanted to go into retail, and essentially they had to start a new business. It's like
Right.
that's a whole new business. So you go back to the accountability chart, and it's like, how do we structure for that? And you start there and you build it out from there before we get to the marketing pieces, because they didn't have the right people to do that. And so I think in addition to all of the brilliance of the marketing, how does it holistically work together too?
Right. You bring up such an important point, TC, and talk about a pivot, right? So it's not a negative pivot, it's a positive pivot. But going through every element that we talked through today, again, with positioning as the starting point, is incredibly important. And ultimately understanding how you're going to get the team focused in this new area, what the difference in messaging is. The sales approach is totally different. So sales needs to be, you know, at the table talking about that. You bring up, you know, a terrific point.
Thanks. I'll quit on that then.
Oh, that's great. And we love EOS, as you know.
I do know that.
Any other thoughts or questions today? Okay. Well, we deeply appreciate all of you joining us today. And we are always a phone call away. You will have access to all of this information shortly. We'll be following up with you. And we really appreciate you joining today. And again, go and do great things and have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.
Awesome. This is great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lori.